Once you've eaten your protein, salt, water, fat, the short answer is I don't care what fruits and grains and vegetables you eat. Figure it out. What you like, what you eat, what you're craving, go for it. I mean, I remember all the stuff that, you should have a very colorful plate. What vegetables did I eat today? How many vegetables did I eat today? Do what makes sense.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. Hey, I wanted to have Jenny West back on again today with this episode, focusing on nutrition, because we touched on it last time when we were talking about weight gain and protein and stuff like that. And she, tried and true, has been using these techniques and guidelines with her families for 30 years and has had healthy babies. And there are so many things coming at us as far as what we should be eating, what we should not eat, how to get more protein in, whatever. And since I don't think we really do get enough protein in, at least with my families, we are not, I wanted to have her back to talk about nutrition and how that works. So Jenny, can you go over the 4 pillars again to kind of start us off with that? And then let's talk.
So the 4 pillars, we talked about it in one of the other conversations: protein, water, salt, good fats. Those 4 things should be the priority of every time you sit down and look at your plate or your snack or whatever. Your brain should be saying, okay, do I have all 4 here? What am I doing? What am I eating? And why am I eating this?
One thing too I wanted to mention right off the bat is if your insurance covers a nutritionist and you happen to be allergic to half the things we're going to be talking about today, see if your doctor will give you a referral to a nutritionist, because they're going to be able to fit in all of the things that you need specifically. And I don't think a nutritionist appointment is bad for anybody when they're pregnant or even in postpartum, because we're developing a baby in either section of our lives. So if you have that option in your insurance available to you, get that referral. And I would say earlier than later, even if you're not pregnant yet, because building a healthy foundation for that baby, that egg and everything to form in is going to be great.
Good idea. And all of this is just pieces of information. Only you know what works at your house. So collecting things that I say, collecting things the nutritionist says. Part of me wants to say, remember, the nutritionist is an expert, so there could be more textbook test answers that may serve you perfectly, or you may find after a little trial and error that it's not the best fit for you, but now you know. And you can either go back to the nutritionist and say, this isn't working for me, what else is there? Or not mention it and do your own research, ask someone else, find out what works for somebody else, and then try that at your house as well. So all of this is flexible in that you got to eat what you're willing to eat. My clients taught me that. There's a midwife here that insists that all her clients eat liver once a week. And it's like, well, I could never be your client because, yes, I make the same face. Ugh. The texture, liver, even if you put a pound of bacon and 5 onions on top of it, it's never going to give me any nutrition because it's never going to enter my mouth. So that's not a nutrition source for me.
I'd have to mainline it. It has to go, cannot go through my mouth. Not happening. And it's great for you. It is great for you. I love the smell of it cooking, just texture. Can't do it.
I'm well aware because of my own experiences that there are some things that your clients are not going to eat. So that's not a resource for them. So you got to figure out another way to do the same thing. One of the big pet peeves when I talk to my clients about the 4 pillars is, I have to drink water. Water? And it's like, yes. As soon as you add anything to the water, lemon juice, tea bags, anything, now it becomes a food. It's a very broad definition. Your body has to now process it and digest it, which slows the uptake. Is it still a liquid? Yes. If you're not going to drink water, it's better that you drink some liquid. But remember, water goes right into your system. It doesn't have to process it or think about it, which is why everybody harps on drink your water, drink your water. And I now tell my clients drink 2 quarts. So a quart is 4 cups. So that would be 8 measuring cups of water a day, and then more fluids.
I know some of my families come in with, you're supposed to drink an ounce for every ounce of body weight you have. Or sorry, you're supposed to drink an ounce of water for every pound of body weight. So if you're 146 pounds and you drink 146 ounces of water a day, that's too much calculation for me, but that's what they've gotten from their doctors. And so 2 quarts is much easier. Some of them drink up to 3 quarts and they're just used to drinking water. So it's not a big deal for them. That's fantastic. That's way too much for me. But
one of the tricks my clients taught me, because I live in a hot, dry climate, is the water bottle that sits in the car while you run errands and do different things. And water bottles, of course, have evolved into very high-tech things now. But she used to just throw a tea bag into a Coke bottle. And she says, lukewarm, not that strong a tea, lukewarm, weak tea was more palatable than drinking sun-baked, lukewarm water. So she would drink it. And it's like, perfect. You figured out how to get yourself to drink without major inconvenience, because she wasn't going to buy a bottle of water at the gas station while she was running errands and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a brilliant idea, to throw a tea bag in, because that is, your brain likes it better and your mouth likes it better. So now you'll drink it.
so that becomes hydration, though, not plain water, right?
Correct.
Because you're processing that as a
But,
food.
and I have friends that you got to pay them to drink water. It's like, just don't make me. So the trade-off is total, complete dehydration versus asking your body to process a drink with something in it as food, but still able to extract. Textbook answer is, please drink your water. Water with, electrolyte powder in it, Gator in a pinch, fine. But I wouldn't recommend it every day. Unless, again, you're out baking in the sun, sweating buckets, then that changes the game plan. So now, protein sources. There's no short answer, because everybody has all these rules about what they will eat or can eat based on allergies or reactions. So protein becomes a bit of a conversation with your care provider, or at least with yourself. What is it that I'm willing to eat? What can I eat? And from that list, where am I going to get 60 to 75 grams of protein while I'm growing a baby? Not enough protein in your diet does interfere with your sleep. Meat is the first category that comes to mind. You're going to eat a portion of meat at your meals. Eggs, dairy, and then the list gets a little more complicated if you take meat, eggs, and dairy out of the equation. I have a list which we'll go over a little bit later about how much is in different typical meats and other products. I do know from my clients that adding cheese or dairy to your diet is the easiest way to up your protein. Adding cheese ups your protein. Now, not everybody can do that anymore.
And it's so easy to grab a string cheese on your way out, or those
Exactly.
little packets of cheese.
Or a container of yogurt. And you've already heard me say Greek yogurt has more protein and more nutrition value than whatever else is on that shelf. But my clients taught me that too. What can you grab as you're heading out the door? Because in most cases, eating because you're pregnant is not the number one priority on the things to do today. So what's going to quickly work? What works at your house? That sentence again. And that could be a little trial and error, or changing how you shop in the grocery store, looking for different things. I had a client for many years that just had to have cereal right out of bed. Like, I have to have a cup of coffee right out of bed. Don't talk to me till I've had coffee. They had to have a bowl of cereal. And they figured out, I was raised that you pour the cereal in the bowl and you pour the milk in after. She reversed it. She put the milk in first and then added powdered milk, dry milk. Sometimes she added a dollop or two of yogurt. She upped the protein value of that half a cup, 3/4 of a cup of milk that was going to be part of her required bowl of cereal. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, because the cereal is going to cover any taste of yogurt or whatever is in that.
Exactly. And now, you mentioned in one of our conversations collagen. You could put the powdered collagen in there too. That led to that thought process of how do we boost the protein in the liquids before we put the cereal in. It's like, okay, so you could make your own protein shakes, and if that's too much trouble, buy the ready-made ones, but you could also put a spoonful or two of dry milk collagen. Now they have protein powders. They have all kinds of ways that you can up the ante. Look at what you're eating routinely, and that's part of what I do with my clients. When they grin and say, oh, I eat protein at every meal, I'm fine. So then we start the conversation. Based on these 3 days, it looks like you're willing to eat meat or you don't eat meat, or we start having a conversation. Where are you going to, in some cases, double your protein intake? What's going to work for you? What are you willing to try? And sometimes it's an epic fail. They'll come back to the next visit and say, oh, I tried, XYZ and it just, couldn't do it. I did it for 3 days and sorry, I bought 16 bottles of it or whatever protein shake they bought. You got to figure out what works at your house. Part of the reason I believe the brewer diet fell out of favor, because for a long time that was the standard for pregnancy, diet, nutrition, education. And I think it was because it was high in dairy. That's the only thing I can really point at.
And dairy is so easy to throw in. Milk, eggs, cheese, and a lot of it.
And eggs, oh my gosh. Everybody gives eggs such a bad rap. And of course, the yolk makes a whole chicken. And I know some people are like, but I'm not growing a chicken. I would beg you to pause for a moment and look at a chicken. It's got legs, it's got muscles, it's got a brain. It's a small one, but it's a chicken. It's got body parts, and everything that chicken needs to grow its whole body is in that yolk. So when you start breaking it down, the egg yolk has got, and here's one of the big buzzwords now, folate is in the yolk, not the whites. Whites are high in protein, but the yolk is what you want when you're pregnant. It also has iron, B complex, and really almost too much to mention. And of course, Tom Brewer said that. You should eat 1 egg every day like a giant vitamin pill. Which then leads me to, after all this discussion about diet, nutrition, and what you're eating, please be taking a good prenatal vitamin. Cover your bases. And if you don't know what that is, do some research. I know I always provided a good quality vitamin as part of my care. It was included in your fee because I kind of didn't want anybody buying the biggest bottle they could find at the local store because you get what you pay for. And for me, it was personal. I wanted you to have good nutrition and good vitamins so that your tissue had good integrity because really, quite selfishly, I didn't want to have to suture you after you had your baby.
And that's one of the biggest, what if I tear? And it's like, how's your nutrition? Because that does make a difference in the elasticity of that whole area. Nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. Yes, agreed.
If your body's struggling to survive, it doesn't have the same energy or focus to the hormonal cocktail that's available to you when you have a baby. And you want your hormonal cocktail to be readily available. But Sarah Buckley, if you want to research that, Sarah Buckley did a whole paper on the hormonal blueprint of labor. Changed the course of my career. I'm so grateful she wrote that because it made everything make so much more sense based on what I was observing instead of what I was trained to believe. Ooh, there's a sentence, trained to believe. That would apply to diet as well. The doctor's answers, the nutritionist's answers, my answers have been collected from reading and experience. It may or may not work at your house. Try it, see what works. Salt. Salt's gotten a bad rap. Salt to taste is the recommendation. And the question I get is, but what if I'm craving salty foods every day? If you're craving it, there's a reason. We may not be able to point at it. Our last presentation, we talked about craving sweets in the middle of the afternoon is an indicator of not enough protein. And the body gave up and said, just give me sugar. Salty foods could be the same thing. Maybe you're drinking too much water. I remember how shocked I was that people could die of water toxicity because they were drinking too much. Not a problem I would ever have, but interesting to learn that. What's your protein intake? The protein, salt, water, fat all have to sort of work together. So if you're craving salt, your body's asking for cellular osmosis help. The fluids are getting into the cell, but they're having a little trouble getting back out. Eating lots of salt, whether you're craving it or not, and not drinking enough water and eating enough protein and fats can then lead to edema, too much salt. So the swelling in the ankles, the things that everybody worries about. If you notice that, stop and think. Have I been diligent about drinking my fluids and my water? Have I been sloughing off on protein? We see it more around the holidays when the sugar content usually goes up. In my practice, it begins at Halloween and ends after New Year's. So sugar takes 3 times the amount of water to process. So if you think about drinking a can of Coke, you really need to be drinking 3 cans of water after you ingest that Coke so that your body can process all that sugar and use it and get rid of it appropriately. So as soon as trick or treat shows up, that happens all the time. My clients start throwing sugar in their urine. So I have to ask them, so did you have breakfast out of your child's trick or treat bag this morning? If they're honest and say yes, I had 3 Reese's cups and a Snicker bar for breakfast. Now the sugar in their urine makes sense. And I can just say, if you're going to have candy for breakfast, have some protein first. Mitigate the sugar rush. And that's a good rule all the time. If you know you're going to eat great grandma's famous chocolate cake, have some protein. Enjoy the cake, but have some protein first so that your body can process that a little better.
And you know what I've had a couple times in class, like several times actually over the years, is I'm starting to swell, so I cut down on my water intake because I'm retaining water. I'm like, no, no, don't dehydrate yourself. No.
If you don't drink enough water, your body does this conversation. Okay, we got some water. We got to save it. This is probably the only water we're getting. If you're too stingy with fluids, the body will hang on to it and not release it. If the body gets the picture that you're drinking a gallon of water or tons of fluid, the conversation gets very snarky. Oh my God, we don't need to save this. You have no idea how much water this human is going to drink. Just use it for what you need and let it go because there's more coming. We spend our life in the bathroom because more water's coming. The cells know the difference between dehydration, too much salt, not enough water, not enough protein, too much sugar, not enough salt, not enough protein, not enough water, and it's constantly adjusting. I found it interesting. For a while, I had an office job when I lived in Denver and had the job long enough that several pregnant bodies moved through. And I found it interesting, and I didn't understand it until I became a midwife. Last trimester, swollen ankles. Some of that is gravity and the laws of physics. But they would go to their doctor. They would be put on a special diet. And then they were told that they had to get up and walk every hour, and they needed to put their feet up while they were sitting at their desk, sitting at an office chair, only encouraged swollen. They always got worse. And finally, I asked to see their diet page. They restricted the water and cut out salt. So now the body was desperate to hang on to any fluids that came in. and their swelling always got worse, which on some level then validated the medical model of, look, something's wrong. We need to get the baby out. Okay, now fruits and grains and vegetables. Once you've eaten your protein, salt, water, fat, the short answer is I don't care what fruits and grains and vegetables you eat. Figure it out. What you like, what you eat, what you're craving, go for it. Make sure, I remember all the stuff that, you should have a very colorful plate. What vegetables did I eat today? How many vegetables did I eat today? Do what makes sense. After you've eaten for the baby and your body, and we talked about that, because you're also maintaining your own body while you're growing a baby, then go for the sugar. Go for whatever is appealing to you, because you ate for yourself and the baby first already. You might be surprised that you're not as interested in the desserts and things that you thought you would be craving and have to have, because you've addressed other nutritional factors and your body's going, I don't need a second piece of toast. You might be surprised. In all this, I did learn, I had a client that came to me, I think it was her third or fourth baby. And through the course of our care and conversations during prenatal visits, she says, oh, everybody in my family struggles to make a 6-pound baby. We're always in trouble at the doctor's office because we can't seem to grow a big enough baby. And I was like, interesting. Okay. So we have some gene bank hereditary stuff here. Also, rancher family. So it's like, well, I know they know how to fix food and eat it. So I just told her, I said, are you willing to experiment? Everybody knows that sugar makes big babies. Sugar makes fat babies. It doesn't necessarily change the skeletal structural size. So I told her, I said, I want you to eat at least one candy bar every day with nuts. Let's get our protein in there, but let's boost your sugar a little bit. Let's see what happens. Don't go nuts and eat tons of sugar every day, but in the afternoon, when you'd like to take a nap, go treat yourself to a candy bar with nuts in it. That baby was 6 pounds, 2 ounces. It was her biggest baby. Test trial of 1. When I run into clients who seem to struggle to grow a 6-pound baby, we have a discussion after they've done their protein, salt, water, fat, have a candy bar. Now, the flip side of that spectrum, I had a client come to New Mexico all the way from Alaska for me to be her midwife. And her first baby was 10 pounds, 14 ounces.
First baby?
Yeah.
She wanted baby. More?
Well, to be fair, both parents were commercial fishermen. So we had a big gene bank, big, tall, strong bodies. So the next pregnancy, she was adamant. We're not doing an 11-pound baby again. We're just not. She didn't eat any sugar. She gave up hot chocolate. She gave up all kinds of things. High protein diet, very few carbs, lots of fruits and vegetables. Her next baby was only 4 ounces lighter. 10-10. So the third baby, she's like, I'm eating whatever I want. And it's like, I'm with you. So she taught me a lot. Her, and it doesn't always apply across the board, but I was so proud of her for changing her diet based on birth number 1. And then she was so disgusted when, it's like, I did all that and I still had a big baby. It's like,
it's just in the gene pool for you, and it's okay. Your body knows how to produce them.
Right. And of course, because it wasn't her first baby, we were all ready. And of course, it came flying out. Her pelvis had already proven it could do it. So just FYI, bits of information. I'm almost not qualified to say the next thing, except I know from my vegetarian and vegan clients that beans have protein in them, rice has protein, but it's an incomplete protein. It's not the same as the protein that comes in meat, dairy, eggs. So you have to combine foods. So if you're in that category and listening, please do a little research about how to properly mix different foods to get a complete protein. And I know the short answer is mixing rice or quinoa or some grain with beans. That's the short answer. I'm sure it's far more complicated than that.
Yeah, and my families that are vegan and vegetarian are very well aware of how to do that.
Excellent.
If you're starting with trimesters, first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, are there any adjustments that you would make for families, because you get them really early, in their diet as you're seeing them per trimester?
Good question. And of course, the test answer is that you should eat like you're growing a baby before you conceive, which may or may not be possible. But if you're considering having a baby, start eating like you're already growing one.
Agree.
Doesn't always work that way, but that would be the optimum situation. So first trimester is the most growth, the most caloric uptake by the baby, because it's going from two cells that just met each other. By 12 weeks, it looks like a little teeny baby. I'm sure we've all seen the little 12-week, it looks like a baby with a big forehead. That's an incredible amount of energy, effort, and calories. And of course, first trimester is when you're figuring out that I'm not having a period, I might be pregnant. 7 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks is when the placenta attaches and the body decides, yes, things are all good, we're going to grow a baby. When the placenta attaches is when the hormonal cocktail takes a big whoosh up, because up until 7 or 8 weeks, the period hormones have been maintaining this idea we might decide to have a baby. When the placenta attaches at 7 to 8 weeks, now the pregnancy hormones, that's the big whoosh, take over. And yes, in some bodies, it's a little overkill. It's a little too much hormone. And that's where the morning sickness comes from. And to put it in very basic terms, because the placenta is attached, all this energy is going to the baby to grow the placenta, maintain the pregnancy. You're actually so hungry, you're ill, which flies in the face of being nauseated when you smell food. But that's why it's in the morning. You went all night without eating, and now you wake up and feel terrible. If you could set an alarm in the middle of the night and eat a couple spoonfuls of peanut butter or drink half a protein shake, odds are high you wouldn't feel as bad in the morning. It's not going to fix all forms of morning sickness, but that's what's going on behind the scenes, is you're so hungry, you're ill. Really eat when you can. I tell my clients that are struggling with morning sickness, eat what you can. Worry about your protein later in the day when it's easier for you to eat. If in the morning all you can do is crackers or dry toast or ginger ale and toast, get something in your body to stop being so hungry that you're sick. Worry about your protein later. And yes, if you can break all the rules and eat right before you go to sleep, do it. You'll feel better in the morning. Usually when you leave the first trimester, 12, 13, 14 weeks, all that settles down. And that's because the hormones have figured out their levels. You have figured out how to get enough calories going. Now you're in the second trimester, and that's usually the most comfortable trimester. Baby's still growing, but it's not this urgency that makes the body that's growing the baby feel like it's paying. Second trimester is when there is that first growth spurt, though, 17 to 22 weeks. You're going to finally say, oh, I'm back. I'm hungry. I'm normal. My body hasn't grown so much. I still feel sort of like myself. Your sex drive might return in the second trimester. Sometimes it dissipates a little bit in the first trimester because so much is going on. Your brain is saying, oh, okay, maybe I can do this. And then the growth spurt hits. You eat your morning cereal with your boosted protein milk, and 45 minutes later, you're starving. That's the baby. That's the growth spurt. If you know this ahead of time, you might remember and say, oh, yeah, somebody said this was going to happen. This is normal. Increase your protein. You might be eating every 2 hours for real. Have snacks everywhere. Have them in your desk at work or wherever you work. Have them in the car. Have them in your purse. Have them in your bag. In the bedroom is great. If in second trimester, some women are already getting up to visit the bathroom in the night, feel free to have a half a protein bar. Have it sitting on your nightstand. You'll feel better overall. You'll sleep better overall. Because when there's not enough protein, that's where this restless leg syndrome thing can come from, which then sort of leads us into the third trimester. Somebody tried to do an anecdotal study that kind of what went on in the first trimester could possibly be revisited in the third trimester. So some women experience mild episodes of morning sickness. And I would say, I want to go back to the person who tried to do this study to say, was this around 33, 34 weeks when the second growth spurt happens? When the baby's putting on finishing weight? And because they've gotten big, and if you're in the medical model, you start hearing things like, well, you could have your baby anytime now, which somehow gives you permission to stop eating like you're pregnant. Don't do that. The baby's taking more off the top during this finishing weight growth spurt, 33, 34, 35 weeks along. So again, give in to eating. Where's your protein? You might be eating every 2 hours. It's not permanent. You will wake up one morning and this ravenous appetite will have dissipated. And that's because the baby did this leap forward, this growth spurt, and now it's going to settle in and sort of catch up with itself. Same thing will happen with your fundal height and everything. It's like your body goes, okay, thanks for that boost. We needed it because we had a big job to do, and now we're going to just settle in and cruise through the next few weeks.
Well, and I appreciate that since you give your clients a heads up about this, they're more involved in their eating. They're more involved in what's coming up. They know what to expect. If it's different than that, they're going to be more communicative to you because they know you're having a discussion about it. And so many of us go to our care providers. We only get that 2-minute appointment. We don't have that discussion on nutrition. We don't even know nutrition's a really big thing other than protein and water because that's all we're told. So understanding that you give that to families, that sets the bar higher for me. It always has because I know how you've treated your clients. And I'm hoping that at some point, our medical system will catch up with the midwifery care system in that education piece because it makes a huge difference in how we grow our babies.
Absolutely. And I'm aware that education takes time, and that's a premium in the medical model. How many clients can we see? How many patients can we see in a day? Because we have so many. As a side note, I know Jenny Joseph in her process has made sitting in the waiting room really sitting in the classroom. She has integrated education. Everybody who works in her facility has a role to play in making sure that the pregnant person in the office is getting informed. So wherever they are, whatever they're doing, that every part of this is to help them have their optimum pregnancy. And I just love that idea. I'm sure we're running out of time as usual. So I just want to hit a few protein values, and I want to address red raspberry leaf. So let me do red raspberry leaf first. Red raspberry leaf is a tea, or it comes in capsules, and it's gotten a bad rap that it's in every Partis Prep combination. Partis Prep is code for some combination that's going to encourage labor at the end of pregnancy. Something that if you need to go into labor, want to go into labor, you take these different formulas and combinations. I am here to tell you, and I will attempt not to be miffed, red raspberry leaf does not start labor, period. It will not, cannot start labor. Red raspberry leaf is a uterine toner. My clients take it throughout their entire pregnancy. And then when I researched this idea that, what can I use to encourage labor when we get to 41 weeks, and I want to encourage labor, red raspberry leaf doesn't have any components to do that. They put it in there because it's a toner. When your uterus decides to contract, it's going to be more efficient. It's sort of like eating protein when you want to build your muscles. Same idea. The reason I'm bringing this up is not about uterine toning, not that you shouldn't have a toned uterus. Red raspberry leaf has the most bioavailable calcium, and calcium's a big deal when you're pregnant. So, taking calcium, bioavailable, that means it's easy for your body to get to when it's going through the system. Anybody ever wonder why calcium pills are the size of a Buick? It's because most of it goes in one end and out the other. It's not available. It's really hard for your body to reach out and get it. Okay? Red raspberry leaf doesn't have that problem. Anybody who's having trouble sleeping, second half of pregnancy, you're uncomfortable, you've got every pillow in the house, all that stuff, take a couple red raspberry leaf capsules closer to bedtime. As your pregnancy really gets to the end and having things sitting right here in your chest, you don't eat right before you go to bed type thing, take it towards the end of the day. Red raspberry leaf will improve your sleep because of the calcium. Those of you that are adding dairy to up your protein, you're probably getting enough calcium. People who can't do dairy, red raspberry leaf is your friend. I'll stop there. Some protein values. We've talked a lot about eggs. Eat eggs every day. Eggs are good for you. 6 grams of protein. So 2 eggs is 12 grams. Now it's a lot of other nutrients, but we're going to just talk about protein. Half a cup of cottage cheese is 12 grams.
And I don't know anyone who just eats a half a cup. We usually eat a cup, don't we? If we're dipping our chips or our vegetables in it, or if we're making it into a dip.
I've never eaten cottage cheese that way. I take half the container. I do a half a can of pineapple chunks and lots of walnuts. That's how I eat cottage cheese.
Interesting.
Nuts. Oh my gosh, nuts are great. Preferred is raw, unprocessed nuts, but nuts are a great source of protein and other nutrients. And somebody said there's something in walnuts that helps your brain work. So I should be eating more walnuts every day.
They're easy to grab as a snack too and take.
Yeah. 1 can of tuna, which is about 6 ounces, is 25 to 30 grams of protein, depending on which brand you buy, which leads me to believe that some brands have more water or oil in their can than tuna. Tofu, 1 cup is 10 grams plus fiber, iron, and calcium. Turkey, 4 ounces, is 25 grams. Turkey's right up there. Turkey has more protein than beef. Pretty close to chicken, but still a little bit more. Greek yogurt, 1 cup is 20 grams. Sneak in the Greek yogurt anywhere you can. Make your fruit smoothies. Just sneak it in everywhere. Lentils, a half a cup of lentils is 9 grams of protein plus fiber and iron. Same thing with the egg yolk, has iron in it. Chickpeas or garbanzo beans, 1 cup is 15 grams plus iron. And then oatmeal, 1 cup of oatmeal is 10 grams of protein. Consider adding walnuts, milk, yogurt, fruit, real maple syrup. Real maple syrup has nutrients in it you can't get anywhere else. And adding nuts makes this a complete protein. And then I scribbled in organic only, which leads to your piece of information.
Right. So glyphosate is a pesticide that is rampant now in America, and oatmeal and garbanzo beans or chickpeas can sometimes have a very high concentration of that, which is really not good for pregnant bodies as well as our babies. So to lower that, obviously you want to buy organic when you can. And there's also a low glyphosate residue label now that you can get on, that will be on the package. The most important one is when they did the chickpea testing, Goya brand was the only one that didn't have glyphosate in it. And it's because it's all in our soil. We're not actively putting it on the food. It's already in the soil, so it's still absorbing into the food. And chickpeas are very high in protein, and they're easy to throw into everything for salads and whatever. So Goya has been the only brand that they have found that didn't have any in it. There are some that had lower, but we want to lower our intake of anything like that particular pesticide. So you can look for organic. Also, steel cut oats are better than regular oats, but once again, find the non-residue label on it.
And because you're talking about chickpeas and what people eat, and you're talking about using cottage cheese as dip, hummus is made from chickpeas. So make sure, I know for a while there I was making my own because I thought it was too expensive. Surely it can't be that hard to make. And I have to say, making hummus from scratch tasted better than anything in the grocery store.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because that's where I found that whole study and all that information out is someone was saying, well, if chickpeas have it, then that means hummus has it. And I buy hummus all the time. And they buy it from Whole Foods or whatever, but we don't know where that's sourced, right? Yes, it looks like but no one's testing for that. So if you are making it, use the canned Goya instead,
And the lady that had to eat candy bars to grow a 6-pound baby, they were ranchers and farmers. And they shared with me that the FDA's definition of organic is a little slippery, may not mean what you think it does. And I'm just going to list a couple more things because of more common foods that I found it interesting that whole turkey, light meat whole turkey, 3 ounces, kind of a serving, is 25 grams, but ground turkey is 23 grams. And that just means there's more air in there because it's ground. So it's the 3 ounces isn't the same 3 ounces. So it's 2 grams less. Half a can of tuna, 17. Shrimp, 3 ounces, 12 grams. Link sausage, 1 link is 9 grams. Salmon, 3 ounces is 22 grams. So again, turkey is more than salmon. Tuna is a little less. Ground beef, 3 ounces is 21 grams. Bacon, 3 ounces, which I think is like 3 slices, might be 4, is 27 grams. So I'll stop listing things. I know we've barely touched the surface, but it's a place to start. In that, back to the opening sentence, you got to do a little keeping track of what you eat. You've got to figure out what you will eat. How are you going to increase your protein, salt, fat, water intake, and then try it. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. Get a nutritionist, talk to somebody. We know now on social media, everybody's an expert. Ask around. Do something that works at your house that makes you feel good. And you know you're eating for your baby and your body because you want to keep your body together now, and your future self will thank you as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to cap it off right there. We will see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.